You'll pay for this, you useless Omega. Matriarcha Morgana's voice sliced through the air like a sharpened blade. Emilia felt the violent shove before she could register the words, her small body hurled against the crystal-laden tray. The cacophony of shattering glass ripped through the grand hall like a deafening war cry. 1,000 women froze, breath caught. The colossal figure on the obsidian throne began to rise, each deliberate movement reverberating through the ground. But could the silent girl no one truly saw survive the crucible poised to unfold? The scent of 1,000 different perfumes mixed with the metallic tang of anxiety, creating a suffocating mist over the silver arena. Each fragrance told a story of despair disguised as elegance. High mountain evergreens from the northern peaks mingled with wild aspen blooms from the western ranges, creating an olfactory symphony that masked the pervasive fear. The selection conclave was not merely a tradition, it was a glorified meat market, where the daughters of the continent's noblest lineages displayed themselves as luxury commodities to conquer the stone heart of King Lucian Blackthorn. He surveyed all from atop his obsidian throne, a black volcanic rock that seemed to absorb the golden torchlight. Nearly 7 feet of raw, brute force, muscles rippling beneath skin bronzed by the sun of countless battles. Scars mapped forgotten wars across his torso, each mark a chronicle of survival the women below could never fully comprehend. His eyes, a deep gold reminiscent of liquid amber, mirrored a profound boredom that verged on hostility. His inner beast, a black werewolf of mythical proportions, growled restlessly within his mind's confines. It was not lust that stirred his formidable spirit, but the nauseating artifice of that elaborate theater. The candidates danced with meticulously calculated movements, fought with blades that had never tasted true blood, and recited ancient poetry with honeyed voices that rang as false as copper coins thinly plated with gold. Their avaricious eyes sought not the king's true heart, but solely the heavy, coveted crown upon his regal head. "Your Majesty will undoubtedly be impressed with Lady Seraphina," Elder Vane murmured at his side, his voice slick as the serpents he bred in his quarters. The gaunt, pale man was the leader of the Council of Elders, his long fingers perpetually toying with silver rings that clinked like dry bones. She bested 3 trained warriors and still recites the sacred texts in ancient Latin. Lucian did not reply. His attention was lost elsewhere, to a profound need he himself could not name. He did not require a political queen who knew how to play chess with human lives. He yearned for silence in a world that constantly screamed, for authenticity in a court that perpetually breathed lies like air. Lady Seraphina concluded her presentation with a reverence almost too perfect. Her blonde hair arranged in coils that had demanded 3 days' labor from 5 maids. Polite applause echoed through the grand hall as she withdrew, her blue eyes sparkling with a confidence verging on arrogance. It was in the interval between her departure and the next contender's entrance that the unthinkable transpired. Not upon the gleaming central stage, but in the dim backstage shadows, where the important never cast their gaze. Emilia desperately strove to cleanse a splash of ruby wine from one of the competitors' green silk gowns. Her calloused, diminutive fingers worked with swift, precise movements, even as the woman spat verbal venom over her head. "You useless Omega! This gown cost more than your worthless hide." Matriarcha Morgana, matriarch of the Dry Hills clan, renowned for her cruelty, raised her hand as if to strike Emilia's face. But Emilia was not observing the suspended hand. Her large, expressive brown eyes, despite the pervasive silence that clung to her, discerned what none others perceived. A young Lycan, offspring of a lesser noble line, bolted towards the grand hall's ponderous door. The door was heaving shut with force, sufficient to pulverize the child's delicate bones. Without conscious thought, Emilia flung herself forward, her own slight form a shield. The door's impact against her back ripped the very air from her lungs, but the child passed through unharmed, oblivious to the peril it had narrowly escaped. It was in that moment of silent immolation that Matriarcha Morgana shoved her with brutal force. Emilia's small frame collided with the tray of crystals she had set aside. The shattering glass cleaved through the lingering melody like a battle cry. The ensuing silence was deafening. 1,000 noblewomen, 50 guards, and 20 musicians held their breath in unison. Emilia, the girl who had never uttered a single word since her discovery in the territory borderlands a decade prior, huddled amidst the glittering shards, awaiting the retribution always exacted upon those like her. She possessed no discernible wolf, no perceptible scent, no known lineage. She was less than nothing within the intricate hierarchy of Lycan society. Blood welled from minor cuts on her hands and knees, staining the white marble floor with crimson drops that resembled fallen rose petals. But Lycan observed what none else perceived. His golden eyes encompassed every fleeting second of the unfolding sequence, the pervasive danger, the instinctive sacrifice, the casual cruelty that ensued. While the noblewomen tittered at the fallen servant, and Morgana smoothed her hair with a smirk of satisfaction, a profound shift occurred in the Supreme Alpha's mien. The black wolf within his mind ceased its guttural snarls. For the first time in years, it remained utterly quiescent, as if recognizing something primordial and profoundly significant. Lycan rose. His movement was slow, deliberate, burdened by an authority that made every person in the hall feel the weight of his presence. His steps descending the stone stairs made the floor subtly tremor, as if the very earth recognized an alpha predator's passage. The silence shifted in quality. It was no longer mockery or mere curiosity. It was pure terror, the kind of fear that made herbivores hide when they sensed a carnivore near. He completely ignored the 1,000 painted women, ignored Matriarcha Morgana attempting to explain what had occurred, ignored even Elder Vane urgently whispering about protocol. He walked directly to the pool of crimson wine and gleaming glass, where Emilia still knelt. The Lycan king, known across 3 territories for his battlefield brutality, knelt. Not to clean the mess, but to reach her eye level. The movement was so improbable, so contrary to his species' hierarchical nature, that many thought they were hallucinating. He extended his large calloused hand, delicately taking Emilia's trembling cut one. His fingers, which had crushed skulls and sundered swords, touched her wounded skin with a tenderness that defied all logic. "Rise," he said, his voice resonating like distant thunder. It was not an order, but an invitation. Shock coursed through the hall like an electric wave. Hysterical whispers began to sprout like weeds, growing in volume until Lycan raised his free hand. Silence returned instantly. "The quest is ended," he declared, still kneeling, still holding her hand. "I have chosen my queen. Had a meteor hit Blackthorn Manor, the chaos would have been lesser." Women fainted. Others shrieked protests. Elder Vane grew so pale his veins became visible through his translucent skin. "Your Majesty, surely this is a mistake," he stammered, his hands trembling so much that his silver rings rattled like chimes. "This creature is just a servant. She does not even have an awakened wolf." Lycan finally rose, gently pulling Emilia up. She was in complete shock, her wide brown eyes full of disbelief and terror. Silent tears streamed down her dust-streaked cheeks. "She bled to protect an innocent," Lycan said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Not for glory, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. How many of you," his golden eyes swept the candidates like a predator choosing prey, "would do the same?" No answer came, for all knew they would not. The court erupted into total chaos. Nobles demanded explanations, guards exchanged bewildered glances, and the 1,000 rejected candidates clustered like a flock of furious ravens. But what truly mattered unfolded at the eye of that storm. Lycan felt no fated mate bond tugging at his soul. He had not chosen her by biological destiny or supernatural chemistry. He had chosen her through a conscious, rational decision based on character, defying centuries of sacred belief that only fated mates could rule together. It was revolutionary. It was perilous, and it placed a giant target squarely on Amelia's back. Elder Vane quickly recovered from his initial shock, his political mind already calculating angles of attack. "Your Majesty," he uttered, his voice dripping with feigned concern, "the law of merit is clear. An Omega without an awakened wolf cannot withstand the energy of a supreme Alpha King. The very attempt could kill her." Murmurs of agreement echoed through the throng. It was true that imbalanced unions frequently ended in tragedy, with the weaker partner consumed by the overwhelming energy of the stronger. Lycan knew this. Everyone knew this. But as he gazed at the silent girl trembling beside him, something in his chest tightened with a resolve he hadn't felt in decades. "Then I shall invoke the right of probation," he declared, his voice reverberating through the stone walls. 6 months. She will live under my protection, but she will have to prove her worth to the pack. It was a dangerous concession. The right of probation had not been utilized for over 2 centuries, primarily because few survived the trial period. But it was the only legal way to circumvent the council's objections. Vane smiled, an expression that never quite reached his eyes. 6 months was ample time to demonstrate the unsuitability of the king's choice, or to arrange a convenient accident. The change in environment was drastic for Amelia. From the cramped, damp servants' quarters, where she slept on a shared straw mattress with 4 other girls, she was taken to the royal chambers. The room designated for her was larger than the entire former servants' quarters, with tall windows that offered a view of the snow-covered mountains. Lycan's scent of sandalwood and rain permeated everything. It was masculine and wild, yet also comforting in a way she couldn't explain. After years spent amidst odors of sweat, sour food, and despair, the clean fragrance of the royal chambers was almost overwhelming. But luxury did not equate to safety. For the first few days, Amelia could barely leave her room. Each time she appeared in the hallways, she was met with gazes ranging from disdain to morbid curiosity. Some of the rejected candidates still lingered in the manor, hoping the situation would resolve in their favor. Their venomous words followed Amelia like shadows. "She won't last a week," Lady Seraphina would whisper to her circle of friends whenever Amelia passed. "Look at her, so slight and fragile. A strong gust of wind and she'll shatter." The communication barrier profoundly frustrated Lycan. He was accustomed to direct orders and immediate responses. Commanding legions and governing a kingdom demanded brutal clarity. Yet Amelia could only communicate through timid gestures and handwritten notes penned in delicate script. Their initial encounters were fraught with tension and discomfort. Lycan, gigantic in comparison, attempted to modulate his naturally thunderous voice to avoid startling her further. Amelia, for her part, seemed perpetually on the verge of a panic attack in his presence. But slowly, patterns began to emerge. Amelia was not merely silent. She was observant in a way that bordered on the preternatural. During tense diplomatic dinners, as Lycan parried with cunning ambassadors and dubious allies, it was Amelia who noticed the subtle details others overlooked. The first critical instance occurred during a meeting with envoys from the Eastern Territory. Lycan was negotiating a crucial trade treaty, one that promised significant prosperity for his people. The envoys were cordial, their offers perhaps too generous. Amelia sat silently in the chamber's corner, theoretically merely observing, when she discerned something amiss with the wine poured specifically for Lycan. The color was accurate, the aroma likewise, but its viscosity was marginally different. Only fractionally, yet enough for someone who had spent years serving drinks to recognize. Without conscious thought, she rose swiftly and approached the table. All eyes turned to her as she extended a hand as if to greet Lycan. In the movement, she purposefully overturned the goblet, spilling its contents across the important documents. "Your creature possesses no education whatsoever," one of the envoys exploded, feigning indignation to mask the true panic flaring in his eyes. Elder Vane, ever eager to humiliate Amelia, advanced with theatrical fury. "How dare you sabotage vital negotiations with your clumsy presence?" But Lycan had witnessed Amelia's eyes, There was something there beyond apology, an urgent warning. He dipped a finger into the spilled wine, bringing it to his nose, inhaling deeply. His face darkened like an approaching tempest. "Slumber root," he snarled, his voice laden with lethal wrath, blended with something more, something that masks the scent of liquid silver. The envoys paled. Liquid silver was a specific poison lethal to Lycans, utterly undetectable by scent when properly masked. It would not kill instantly, but would paralyze Lycan sufficiently for him to be safely eliminated. Within moments, the treacherous envoys lay dead, or in desperate retreat, their audacious assassination attempt utterly thwarted. Lycan regarded Emilia with a newfound depth, not mere protection or nascent curiosity, but profound, unyielding respect. "How did you ascertain?" he inquired later, when they were finally alone. Emilia retrieved parchment and quill, inscribing with meticulous calligraphy, "I served beverages for years. I comprehend how everything should operate." It was a succinct response, yet it unveiled something pivotal. Her servitor experiences, though deemed degrading by others, uniquely honed her to perceive intricate details the privileged would never discern. From that night, a subtle shift in some guards' perception of Emilia began. Word permeated the manor that the clumsy servitor had saved the Supreme Alpha. This also significantly heightened the peril around her. Elder Vane realized he had grievously underestimated the girl. She was no transient distraction or royal whim. She posed a significant threat to his protracted machinations. He began gathering intelligence, delving into her past with a relentless, obsessive determination. Meanwhile, Lycan made a decision that astonished all. He would personally undertake Emilia's tutelage, not in brute strength. She could never physically contend with trained Lycans, but in sagacious strategy, astute observation, and primal survival. Training sessions commenced at dawn, when Blackthorn Manor was quiescent, allowing them to work unobserved. Lycan taught her to scrutinize micro-expressions, identify deceit through corporeal language, and memorize egress routes and secure loci. Physical contact during these strenuous drills ignited something unexpected. As he adjusted her posture or demonstrated a defensive maneuver, a static electricity coursed through them. It was subtle, yet undeniably potent. Their gazes met longer than necessary. Their breaths quickened as he neared to correct her technique. Both consciously denied these burgeoning feelings. The official companion's bond, the fabled fated mate connection, did not exist. Both Lycan and Emilia were raised believing true romantic connections required that mystical, unbreakable link. Weeks transmuted into months. Emilia slowly found her place in Blackthorn Manor, not as a servitor or traditional queen, but as something fundamentally novel. Her silent presence subtly affected the rigid court dynamics. Small acts of profound benevolence began to appear. She left medicinal herbal infusions in Lycan's study when he seemed sleepless. She discreetly systematized critical documents when he appeared overwhelmed. She never solicited recompense, never drew attention to her quiet, indispensable ministrations. Lycan, in turn, began to guard her in subtle but profoundly significant ways. When someone spoke of her disrespectfully in his presence, the room's temperature seemed to plummet by several degrees. He ensured she had appropriate attire for the biting mountain cold. At night, when Blackthorn Manor lay silent, he would read to her ancient tales, poignant poetry, chronicles of distant lands. These quiet intimacies forged a connection that transcended the supernatural chemistry expected of fated mates. It was built on deliberate choice, mutual care, and genuine respect. But it also left them profoundly vulnerable. Winter arrived with an unrelenting savagery, bringing with it blizzards that isolated Blackthorn Manor from the outside world. And with the cold came something far more perilous: the moon sickness. It was a rare condition that afflicted high-level alphas who had not completed their mate bond within a specific time frame. Unchanneled energy accumulated, festering into toxicity. leading to progressive madness and eventual demise. The initial signs were subtle: heightened irritability, gnawing insomnia, a chilling loss of appetite. Lycan tried to conceal the early symptoms, but Emilia noticed the changes immediately. His hands trembled subtly during meals. His scars seemed to darken, as if inflamed from within. His golden eyes began to fringe with a sanguine hue. The Council of Elders, spearheaded by Elder Vane, seized the opportunity. "Your Majesty," he declared during an emergency meeting, "the moon sickness is a clear sign this union is unnatural. Your energy is being rejected because you chose an unsuitable consort." It was a powerful argument, and Lycan knew it. Lycan lore affirmed that only a true bond could stabilize the volatile energy of a supreme alpha. With each passing day, he became a growing peril to all around him. The situation reached a critical juncture during a particularly savage blizzard. Lycan completely lost control, his inner beast seizing the reins. His roars ripped through the corridors like thunder, rattling the very stones of Blackthorn Manor. Trained guards recoiled in abject terror as he stormed past them, his eyes now utterly crimson, elongated fangs glinting in the torchlight. Emilia found him in Blackthorn Manor's highest spire, where he was systematically dismantling everything within reach. Ancient furnishings splintered into kindling, priceless tapestries were shredded to mere rags. He was beyond reason, utterly lost to the fevered madness. She should have fled. Any sane soul would have fled. But instead, she approached slowly, her steps hushed upon the snowdrifts that had piled through the shattered windows. "Lycan," she whispered, the first word she had uttered in a decade. The sound of her voice was like a lightning bolt cleaving the tempest. He froze mid-roar, spinning to face her with eyes that knew no recognition. For a terrifying moment, Emilia thought he would strike. But then something shifted in his expression. The crimson in his eyes flickered, allowing glimmers of gold to pierce through. She extended her hand slowly, as if nearing a wounded beast. "I am here," she stated, her voice hoarse from years of disuse, yet clear and resolute. "You are not alone." It was then the first great revelation shattered the foundations of all they believed to know. Emilia was not mute from physical or mental trauma. Her silence had been imposed by a magical block, placed upon her as a child, a seal now fracturing due to the overwhelming proximity of Lycan's overwhelming aura. But there was more. As her voice returned, something ancestral stirred in her blood. Emilia was a descendant of the Moon Singers, a lineage believed extinct for centuries. Her voice carried frequencies capable of calming or maddening beasts, depending on her intent. The problem was that Elder Vane had known this from the beginning. He had been investigating her lineage since Lycan's choice, and his discoveries revealed a shocking truth. Emilia had not been found casually in the territory borderlands. She had been placed there strategically, hidden in plain sight until it was safe to reveal her. During the storm that isolated Blackthorn Manor, Vane and his conspirators made their move. Using secret passages known only to the most ancient Council of Elders, they abducted Emilia from her quarters as she slept. When she awoke, she was bound in a carriage pulled by horses through the driving snow, being taken to the Whispering Peaks sanctuary. The ruins were the remnants of an ancient temple dedicated to the moon, a place where blood rituals could amplify magical powers. Vane planned to use her blood in a ceremony that would allow him to steal both her power and the weakened king's energy. When Lycan discovered the abduction, his condition deteriorated catastrophically. The combination of moon sickness and the loss of the only person who could calm him propelled him into near-total madness. He tore apart half of Blackthorn Manor searching for her, his roars echoing for miles. But the emotional connection they had forged, based on small gestures of care, shared moments of vulnerability, and mutual respect, served as a tenuous anchor to his sanity. He could not track her by scent, which still remained mysteriously hidden, but he could sense something more subtle: the trail of silence she left in the spiritual chaos of the world. The journey to the Whispering Peaks sanctuary was a race against time. Lycan rode alone through the storm, his mind split between bestial fury and desperate determination. The snow cut his face like razors, but he barely noticed. With each passing moment, he felt the madness pulling him deeper. He arrived at the ruins just as Elder Vane was initiating the ritual. Dozens of traitors had gathered, renegade Lycans and lesser alphas bought with promises of shared power. The air was heavy with ancient magic and the scent of blood. The battle that ensued was apocalyptic. Lycan fought with the fury of a storm made flesh, tearing through enemies with claws that seemed forged of solid shadow. But he was alone against many, and the moon sickness was burning his energy rapidly. They managed to corner him using nets of liquid silver, the poison burning through his skin like acid. Elder Vane approached with a ritual dagger, his eyes gleaming with anticipated triumph. "You should have chosen one of the nobles," he snarled, the blade reflecting the moonlight. "Now you will die for your stubbornness, and I will rule in your stead." It was in that moment of absolute despair that Amelia saw the man who had treated her with dignity about to die. The magical block that had sealed her voice for so many years shattered like glass, but what emerged was no common scream. It was a pure frequency, a tone that existed beyond the normal spectrum of hearing. The sound undulated through the air like visible waves, making the very stones of the ruins vibrate in harmony. All Lycans in the area were instantly paralyzed, except Lycan. The second great revelation redefined the understanding of everything. Amelia was no ordinary Omega. She was an Omega Prime, a conductor of pure energy specifically needed to stabilize a supreme Alpha King. The companion bond had not failed to appear when they first met, because it was not based on initial encounter. It exploded into existence in the moment of mutual sacrifice, when both were willing to die for the other. The connection struck them like lightning, sending waves of energy through their bodies that united them not just emotionally, but at a cellular level. Lycan felt his mind clear instantly, the madness of the moon sickness washed away by the perfect harmony of their combined energies. Freed from the silver nets, he rose like a force of nature. The remaining traitors were decimated in a matter of minutes, their betrayals paid with blood. Elder Vane tried to use Amelia as a human shield, but she had transformed into something beyond vulnerability. The exertion of her power, however, nearly killed her. Waves of energy she had never felt before coursed through her small body, burning through every nerve like liquid fire. She collapsed into Lucian's arms, her breath shallow, her heart struggling to beat. The return to the manor was no victory celebration. It was a desperate vigil. Lycan, the colossal king who had never feared a single thing in his life, spent weeks kneeling beside her bed, clutching her hand, pleading for her to awaken. Physicians and healers converged from across the kingdom, yet none fully grasped what had transpired within her. Her metamorphosis into an Omega Prime had fundamentally altered her very physiology. She navigated the liminal space between life and death, her soul striving to reconcile with the stark new reality of her emergent power. Through those arduous weeks of vigil, Lycan unearthed facets of himself he never knew existed. The one who had always solved every plight with brute force now found himself murmuring ancient tales to an unconscious woman. He, who had never wept, felt tears trace paths down his scarred cheeks as he beseeched her to return to him. The court watched, captivated by a morbid fascination mixed with horror. Their king, the invincible warrior, stood emotionally stark and vulnerable. Some whispered that this was a glaring weakness, but the sagacious few recognized it as a singular strength, the kind forged only by true love. When Amelia finally parted her eyes, her first word was his name. Her voice, hoarse from weeks of profound silence, was nonetheless real and irrevocably hers. Lucian's relief surged so intensely, it nearly stole his breath. "I thought I had lost you," he rasped, his forehead resting against hers. "Never," she replied, her delicate hand tracing the scars etched upon his face. "I am precisely where I belong." Her recovery unfurled at a glacial pace, yet each dawn unveiled new, staggering facets of her transformation. She could now sense the raw currents of his emotions through their nascent bond, and he, hers. When the weight of kingdom affairs pressed upon him, she would instinctively begin to emanate soothing, tranquil waves. And when she felt overwhelmed by the crushing expectations of her new station, he would subconsciously temper his own formidable energy to spare her from being overcome. The power dynamic had subtly, irrevocably shifted. Lycan, though still king, now knew his sanity and formidable strength hinged entirely upon the slight woman he had once salvaged from mockery. She had become his steadfast anchor in a world that relentlessly sought to drag him into the abyss of violence and brutality. But Emilia, too, was profoundly changed. Her voice, when she deigned to unleash it, now carried an innate authority that compelled even the most arrogant alphas to pause and listen. She ruled not through fear or brute force, but through an intuitive wisdom that seemed to flow from a source far deeper than mere experience. The preparations for her final coronation transcended any previous royal ceremony. Emilia disavowed the majority of traditional adornments. Instead of jewels plundered from distant lands or silks that cost fortunes, she chose symbols that profoundly represented her arduous journey. The gown was simple, yet elegant, crafted from local fabric in a shade of blue that mirrored her eyes. The sole piece of jewelry she wore was a necklace fashioned from the very crystals she had shattered the night they first met, now transformed into an object of profound beauty by a local artisan. The scar from the kidnapping remained starkly visible on her neck, a mark she defiantly refused to conceal with cosmetics or any magical pretense. It was an indelible part of her unfolding story, irrefutable proof of her harrowing survival and profound transformation. When the day of the coronation arrived, the grand hall was thronged with representatives from every distant corner of the kingdom. Yet, the atmosphere resonated with a different frequency than that of the selection conclave. Instead of the crushing weight of competition and despair, a genuine, almost palpable expectation now hummed in the air. Emilia entered the grand hall not as a nervous candidate, but as a woman who had irrevocably discovered the depth of her own power. Her steps were sure, her posture unyielding. She had learned to wield silence not as a sanctuary for hiding, but as a potent strategic tool. When Lycan Blackthorn rose to receive her, he did not sweep her onto the obsidian throne as he might a traditional queen. Instead, he descended the ceremonial steps, meeting her precisely midway on the grand staircase. The gesture echoed their initial tumultuous encounter, yet its meaning was now utterly transformed. This time, it was not a supreme alpha condescending to aid a wounded servant. It was a partner seeking their equal, two halves of a formidable force now far greater than the mere sum of its parts. "My queen," he pronounced, his voice a low, resonant rumble as he offered his hand. "My king," she replied, her own voice newly unbound, accepting not merely his hand, but the entirety of their shared destiny that came with it. This time, the resulting silence was not one of shock, but of profound collective reverence. The kingdom bore witness to something that transcended the rigid confines of tradition or political maneuvering. It was love in its most pristine form, forged through the crucible of adversity and the unwavering power of conscious choice. The ceremony that ensued was deceptively simple, yet overwhelmingly powerful. Instead of the traditional vows that rigidly focused on obedience and prescribed duty, Lycan and Emilia had forged promises wholly their own. They vowed to be strength when the other faltered, silence when words proved too much, and a resounding voice when the truth demanded to be heard. As the crowns were finally placed upon their heads, a surge of raw, untamed magic erupted. Their combined energy pulsed outward through Blackthorn Manor, igniting torches that had long since dimmed, mending ancient cracks spiderwebbing the stone walls, and breathing vibrant new life into winter-dormant gardens. The kingdom had discovered not merely new rulers, but an entirely new paradigm of leadership. They would govern not solely by brute force or archaic tradition, but by the intricate balance between the voice that soothes the soul and the claw that fiercely protects. In the years that unfurled, stories woven with reverence and awe spread across the Lycan territories about the supreme alpha, who chose profound love over calculated political advantage, and the Omega Prime whose resonant silence spoke volumes beyond any battle cry. Their unbreakable union became an enduring symbol that true power stemmed not from dominance, but from genuine, unyielding connection. The ancient prophecy was mistaken. The Lycan king needed no warrior to wage his wars, but rather a peace worth fighting for. And in the end, the girl whom none had truly seen became the singular beacon toward which the entire kingdom gazed with hope. Her story transcended mere events, becoming legend, recounted in every roaring hearth of the Lycan strongholds, and whispered through the ancient stone halls of Blackthorn Manor. It was a testament, spoken by mothers to their daughters, of the potent power of kindness within a brutal world, of finding strength woven into vulnerability, and of the truth that sometimes the greatest monarchs are those humble enough to kneel. The enduring tale of how true love could conquer ancient traditions and soften even the most war-hardened hearts became a cornerstone of their new era. It proved that powerful alphas could find their destined companions not in bloodlines or preordained mates, but in the unexpected corners of their lives. A solemn reminder echoed through the generations that the finest queens often rise from the humblest beginnings, knowing the true, unbreakable worth of humility and profound sacrifice.